Well, Charles Leclerc was superb yesterday, superb in his recovery after that morning crunch against the Tech Pro barrier. Really, really good in the afternoon. And he confirmed everything we saw yesterday. Still astonishing to think about it. If you look back at where Formula One has been over the last two or three races, where Ferrari were, the brilliant drive by Charles Leclerc at Monza to beat the faster McLarens in terms of the overall package. No doubt they were quicker around Monza. And here we are at Baku, a street circuit. Yeah, long straights, but lots of tight corners as well. Three very different sectors. And Charles Leclerc and Ferrari absolutely dominant in qualifying, putting in a final qualifying lap that just eclipsed the field. A superb performance by Charles, superb performance by Ferrari as well. Brilliant management, I thought, how they used the traffic. They found the lulls in the traffic, particularly in Q2, not sending out their drivers when everybody else was out, but using that lull between the first set of tyres and the second set of tyres to send both drivers out. This is Freddie Vasseur at his very best. I've often said, Freddie, with his the road dust he's got from all those years in GP3, GP2, Formula One, obviously learning his way, and now at Ferrari doing an absolutely brilliant job. And I think more than anything, today's qualifying was a contrast between the management at Ferrari, how they got the best from both drivers, how they got the best from the traffic, and they made sure they got their laps in, compared with McLaren, which was an absolute disaster, of course, for Lando Norris, who didn't even make it out of Q1. If we look at what happened there, he was actually running with Oscar Piastri and quite near Charles Leclerc as they went out in Q1, and they'd all done about 5 laps now on a new set of soft tyres. And whereas McLaren brought both drivers in to do a 1-lap run on that same set, but having made a small adjustment or whatever they were going to do, and I'm giving the benefit of the doubt there because I hate to think that it was for fuel, particularly after the lesson that presumably everybody learnt from Mercedes at Hungary in Q1 when they didn't put enough fuel in Georgia's car. Q1 around Baku, lots of traffic. Why would you want to be marginal on fuel? So let's give them the benefit of the doubt and assume it wasn't for fuel. Maybe, as I say, it was something like a front flap adjustment or something like that. On both cars, though, it seems a bit odd, doesn't it? Ferrari kept Charles out and made him do one more lap. And it was that lap that put him to the right in the top 3 of Q1 and then enabled him just to sit out effectively the last 2 or 3 minutes when the traffic jam, of course, was horrendous. 18 cars on track. The only 2 in the pits at that point were Charles Leclerc and Sergio Pérez, who'd done a really good job in the Red Bull Honda. And there were McLaren with all the pressure on them to do that lap. Oscar Piastri was slightly down. Well, on track, Oscar was ahead of Lando. So Lando was able to pace himself with Oscar, and he was quicker through Sector 1, quicker through Sector 2. The clock's ticking now. No more laps after this. And as they're coming up towards Sector 3, it's very clear that Esteban Ocon's horrendously miserable weekend in the Alpine is continuing, and he's moving very, very slowly offline, keeping out of the way. Daniel Ricciardo goes past him. Oscar Piastri goes past him between corners. But when Lando starts to approach Esteban Ocon between turns 17 and 18, right at the end of the lap, the road is starting to curve a little bit to the right. So Esteban Ocon slows down even more just to make sure he's out of the way and doesn't compromise Lando's lap. Now at this point, the marshal sees Ocon slowing from the speed he was doing in the first place and puts out a yellow. And it was actually out as Lando went through that section. So Lando did exactly the right thing and backed off. And I, how many drivers would have backed off in that situation? They can see what it is, just a slow car. He's way out of the way. And Lando backed off, did the right thing, lost the lap and just came straight into the pits. And there was talk afterwards from McLaren blaming the marshals, blaming the officials, saying that, oh, it should have been a white flag and not a yellow flag. But I counter that by saying that if you're a marshal and you see a slow car going even slower suddenly, and bear in mind, Ocon stopped on the circuit twice already this weekend. I mean, just hasn't got any laps in at all. I might have put the yellow out in that situation. There's a very fast car coming, looks as if he's going to grind to a halt. Put the yellow out. Oh, no, he's not. He's continuing. Oh, take the yellow out. That happens a lot. You see yellows coming on for a few seconds and then going away. Indeed, on that very lap, when Esteban first ran into problems with the power unit, I guess he was very slow through turns 4 and 5, and they put the yellow out there as well. And the two Haas Ferrari drivers, Nico Hulkenberg and Ollie Berman, caught the back end of the yellow on that strip there. So it had even happened on that lap, so it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody in the pit lane. So I think it's a bit unfair and uncalled for McLaren to criticise the marshals for that, because at the end of the day, it does come under the heading of safety, and everybody in Formula One is constantly drilled to be as safety conscious as possible. They talk about luck a lot, and you could say in a way that that was bad luck for Lando. But you make your own luck, and there's always a cause and a reason for everything. And the reason that Charles Leclerc wasn't in that position, for example, is that when there were 18 cars on track, he was in the garage, thank you very much. And he was in the garage because Freddie Vasseur had told the engineers to make sure that they got a time out of him on that one set, and he didn't want him out when the traffic was at its worst right at the end. And that's what McLaren should have done. Why did they bring both drivers in with whatever it was, 5 minutes to go? It was unbelievable because it was Q1. They were easily going to get through. Lando probably would have qualified third today. I think he probably would have beaten Carlos Sainz. He had the pace. He was really quick. He was quicker than Oscar. Why didn't they just keep him out to put in that lap on that scrub set of tyres, staying out there? Instead of which they brought him in to make an... Both drivers came in to make an adjustment, and they went out. It was just like one lap, and you're going to blink and you'll miss it. So that was the big contrast for me. The other thing was Max Verstappen. As you said yesterday, Sergio Pérez looking really good in the car, looking like the old Sergio. A lot of credit should go to Rob Wilson for that. And as you know, in the live stream, I've been saying, whenever anybody's been saying, what do you think about Sergio? Should he be sacked from Red Bull? I've always said, look, the guy's got talent. What they need to do is just send him to Rob Wilson for a few days in the August break. And unbelievably, that's what they did. And unbelievably, he's now, all credit to Rob, he's now much more settled going into corners. Of course, he's on a circuit on which it's easy to say, oh, he likes it, he goes well here. A bit like people say that about Charles Leclerc. He loves Baku. I mean, Baku, of course, remembering, I'm all over the place here, but remember that Baku was the circuit in which Charles raced almost immediately after his father had passed away. He was in Formula 2 at the time, and he not only won the feature race, but he almost won the sprint race as well. Just an amazing achievement. So yeah, obviously Baku means a lot to him. But getting back to Sergio Perez, the reason he's so good at Baku, as I've said many times, is because of those 90-degree corners in Sector 1. Those are absolutely tailor-made for the talent of Sergio Perez. He's really, really good from, I was going to say apex to exit, but it's even before the apex there, because there's such wide, certainly turn 1, and turn 2 is not bad. It's got a wide entry, narrow exit, but they're both just perfect for Sergio. He just gets the car perfectly set up before the apex, wide entry as normal, nothing about short corners here, but he's just so good in the way he puts down the power. And they love to show these shots of the cars coming out and how close they're getting to the guardrail. Well, of course, it's one thing to be doing that when the car's kind of out of control. It's quite another to have done all the work and just be pointing the car to an exact location, exact coin, tiny little coin that you're just looking at, you're going to drive the car to. As Fangio once said, he said, everybody talks about how accurate I am on exits, but he said, all I'm doing, I've done all the hard work, I'm just eyeing up that little point I want to hit, and there I go and hit the point. Yeah, it's 1 millimetre from the guardrail. Well, 1 millimetre, 10 millimetres, what difference does it make? If you see what I mean, it's just steering to that point, and that's what Perez does so well. But simultaneously, he's balancing the car on the throttle beautifully, and it's so nice to see Perez doing that again. I would say he does that better than anybody else on the grid right now. Charles Leclerc's talent around Baku is mainly Sector 2. He's phenomenal through Sector 2. Yes, he's very good Sector 1, but Sector 2, he's just amazing. His commitment in Sector 2. It does require commitment because there's a lot of blind corners there in terms of where you want to position the car. But he does, because he's got that feel for short corners and because he's got that slightly rounded transition point as he's going from the straight, starting to initiate the steering. Everything happens very calmly, even though he's on the absolute physical limit of what can be done. So just absolutely beautiful laps from both those drivers. But just to reiterate the point, beautifully managed qualifying session as well by Ferrari. Full credit to them. We don't see that often. We don't see drivers coming out as they did in Q2 in that lull between the two runs, because the track is always going to be quicker right at the end. And they made full use of it. absolutely brilliant. And of course that engenders confidence for the driver as well, because if he's going out and every time he's going out he's got a relatively free track and he's putting in the lap and the car's going quicker and quicker, that builds up, doesn't it, after a while. Max Verstappen, getting back to Max, he was not happy with the car. He was quite good. I mean, apropos yesterday and how slow it was in a straight line, yep, they did whatever it was, engine, aero, they gave him straight line speed, and he was right up there with everyone today. And there's no excuse in terms of top speed now for Max Verstappen. But in doing that, he was complaining in Q1 about the car, about a loose rear end, all over the place and unpredictable. And yeah, Max was still getting the best from it, doing a very good job of juggling the variables, as we've often said. But it's not an easy circuit for a driver if the car's that much to his distaste. It's not an easy circuit for a driver like Max to stay on top of it and to get the best from it, because he compared with Sergio Pérez through those 90-degree corners, he's still loading up the car a little bit more than Pérez before the slower, the minimum speed point. And from that moment, he's got a little bit more load on the car on exit as well. So he's actually accentuating the the oversteer problem that he called it it's bouncing all over the place on the rear axle, I think is what he said. I think it adds up to oversteer, possibly with a bit of aero bouncing as well. So, and Perez was on top of that because he's just so good on those sorts of corners. As I've always said, those 90-degree corners are just tailor-made for him. So Max was on the absolute limit of the way he can drive, and he was always quick in Sector 2, always quick. And right up there. I mean, Charles was really quick on that last run, but I think on the last run in Q3, Max had already had a big moment on his first set in Q3, over the curb and probably damaged the floor, and that was it. But his big moment, that moment was towards the end of his first lap in Q3. He lost it around turn 16, the fast left-hander coming out, up on the curb, and that put him 3 kilometers an hour down, going through the kink, and then he was about 4 kilometers an hour down as he went over the start-finish line. And that was his first run. And then the second run, I think we'll probably find that the floor was damaged, and he never got the best from the car thereafter. So I think, yeah, Perez, really, really good. And I think one of the reasons Max went off is because Perez was as good as he was. And I think when Perez is on it, and Max is a little bit confused as to where he's next going to go because the car doesn't feel right, that's when we see errors coming in. I mean, you can't take it away from him because he's a racing driver and he's on the limit, and it was a beautiful hold, actually, an unbelievable hold. He got the car at an amazing angle. But if Perez had been his usual midfield, maybe Max wouldn't have done that. Maybe not. But so it's interesting, the effect of a teammate. I've often said, if the teammate's really quick, it's not what a Lewis or a Max or a Charles really wants. As it happened today, I thought Carlos Sainz did a really, really good job as well. At one point, I think it was in Q2, Charles was saying, I keep asking if I can have someone in front of me. In other words, if we can have a tow. And I thought we practiced this all weekend. Yeah, kind of. And Carlos then came on the radio and said, well, he keeps not being there when I'm ready to give him the tow. And bless him, it looked as if Carlos really did try hard to give Charles a tow in Q3 on his second run in Q3, and maybe compromised his lap a little bit. Probably not, but when there's all that going on, and maybe we didn't hear any radio saying it, but maybe there was, Carlos trying to help Charles or whatever, maybe that compromised him a little bit. So in any event, I thought he did a really good job, Carlos Sainz, in the other car, and he's in good shape for tomorrow. P3 won't have done his confidence any harm at all. And then there's Oscar Piastri, who did get in that lap right at the end. McLaren were lucky that he did. As I say, if he and Lando had stayed out in Q1, I think they both would have gone quicker. They both would have got comfortably into Q2 if they hadn't gone into the garage. That's what it looks like. I mean, if Charles could do it, those two could for sure in those cars. And Oscar thereafter without Lando, yeah, it would have been a slightly different field to qualifying for him, because McLaren, he was carrying McLaren on his shoulders then, the entire representation. All talk about any politics and having to give any positions to Lando now completely out the window, which is obviously a relief from Oscar's point of view. And it's a great circuit for Oscar. He's very, very good around there, incredibly precise. And yeah, not far away from Perez in terms of his power application, and not far away from Leclerc in the way he's going into corners. Just beautiful to watch. And everything he did was just systematic and correct, and he just got quicker and quicker, and the track was pretty quick right at the end of Q3, even though Max never got to see it like that. And on a new set of soft tyres, he was phenomenal right at the end. So fabulous lap by Oscar Piastri as well. Yeah, you see Charles Leclerc there, 41.3. That was the lap he did on his last run in Q3. Oscar Piastri, 41.6. Really good. They've been neck and neck, 41.6, and then Charles went out to do that 41.3. Fabulous lap. Carlos, 41.8. As I say, slightly compromised. Sergio Pérez, very good lap as well. He went quicker in Q3 and he got quicker on the second run, did everything in the right progression, whereas Max stagnated and went back a little bit. George Russell, 41.8. George, I think, could have been quicker. He was really, really good all day, looked good in the car. But like many drivers, he lost tyre temperature and got out of sync when going into the last run in Q3. Alex Albon had done a very good job in the Williams-Mercedes. They left, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen clunky things going on with the management at Williams. They left a cooler in the left side radiator duct. And of course, everything that was mayhem when he came out of the pit lane and he stopped. And that held up people like Lewis, people like Max, people like George, and you got the covers off the tyres by then. You're in the pit lane, you're going out, and you got to stop, and that's when the temperature comes out of the tyres. And some cars are more sensitive, obviously, to those sorts of temperature changes than others. George obviously not happy with that, but at the end of the day, pretty good lap. And we're going to see in a second how well placed he is in the race tomorrow and how quick he was in a straight line. Max Verstappen, 42.0, we talked about him. Lewis, yeah, just didn't really look as if he was ever going to do anything more than where you see him on the grid there, just there or thereabouts with his old sparring partner Fernando Alonso just behind him. He did a pretty good job in the Aston Martin if you look at how far down Lance Stroll is and how quick Stroll has been around Baku at various times in the past. So good lap from Fernando, as ever, as we would expect from Fernando. And then look at Franco Colapinto, really, really good lap in the Williams. With Albon not doing a time right at the end there, look at that, 42.5, got through into Q3. Wow, what a performance from him. Really, really good. Under pressure too, to make Q3 in his second race for Williams. Just outstanding performance. Alex Albon right behind him, but not having done that last run. So excellent performance by Williams, albeit few question marks still about the management there. And then Ollie Behrman did a very good job, almost got into Q3 as well. Just beaten by Albon and just looked really good in the Haas Ferrari. So a great day, you've got to say, for Jock Clear, because on his side of the garage, obviously, he's got Charles Leclerc and Ollie Behrman is one of his guys as well. So what a day for Jock Clear, who also happens to be a big Rob Wilson guy. So there you go. So there we are. That is qualifying. It's going to be an interesting race tomorrow. Obviously, Charles Leclerc on paper should be able to walk away with this one without any of the real pressure that he had. Well, it didn't have pressure at Monza because nobody thought he was going to win Monza. I mean, certainly didn't have the car to win Monza. McLaren had the car to win Monza. But he did win Monza because he drove so well and managed the tyres so well and didn't fall into the trap like McLaren drivers of racing one another. Well, Oscar Piastri is not going to have that problem tomorrow. He's not going to have to race Lando Norris. And it'll be interesting to see how the two face up tomorrow in terms of the race. Carlos Sainz, I think, is well poised to take advantage of any mishaps or any other situations that may go on. If he has a good, clean race, he can get a really good result tomorrow. And the same applies to Sergio Pérez. He can have a very, very good race tomorrow as well. And then there's George Russell, who's going to be super quick in a straight line. So a lot going on there. And if Max can get through the first couple of corners without the front wings getting damaged or whatever, then, and he's got Lewis behind him, Alonso, yeah, he should be okay unless there's some sort of drama. Unless Franco Colapinto makes an unbelievable start and dives down the inside, passing 5 cars. That could happen, as Ollie Behrman could. Anyway, I don't think it would. They seem to be very, very calm and logical drivers with their feet on the ground, which is a good thing. So yeah, should be interesting. Let's have a look at that tomorrow after the race. Thanks for watching, as ever. Thanks to Jetcraft, to OEM Exclusive, and to Track Ninja for their support of this channel. And of course, to you, the viewer, for watching. See you tomorrow.